Welcome, everybody. We are joined by Nashville SC head coach Gary Smith. Coach, your thoughts on today's result and the continued unbeaten streak for the team?
Yeah, very, very challenging game here tonight. This DC group that Wayne and his staff have put together are an extremely competitive bunch. And I would imagine anyone watching the game could see from the way that the game ebbed and flowed that there was an awful lot of determination from both groups. Very few opportunities and sights of goal for either team, and an awful lot of endeavour in the middle part of the field. And to be perfectly honest, a very, very good point to come away from such a challenging environment.
We are going to open the floor for questions. A reminder to everybody on the call to please alert me by raising your hand button that you have a question for Coach. We'll kick it off with Tim Sullivan. Tim?
You mentioned that there were not very many clean sights on goal throughout the match, but it seemed like in the first half, especially, DC kind of controlled a little bit more of the serious chances, even if you guys were right in it for the run of play. Did you feel like once Alex scored that you guys were going to be able to maybe stem that tide and hold on for the end there? What was your kind of feeling when the equalizer was scored?
Well, I'm always bitterly disappointed, Tim, when the equaliser goes in. But I think that maybe the first comments to make are, with a couple of omissions from their group, most notably Benteke, they played a very interesting shape that I think caught us all a little bit by surprise with those four midfield players and wing backs. And they played it well. And I thought they controlled a lot of that midfield area, not just in possession, but I thought their regains and their pressure in that midfield made life very, very difficult for us to get too much traction. And it really forced us to keep our possession and any any sort of bulwark that we had in that back line. So credit to them. We made a few changes and a little shift at half time. I thought the group looked an awful lot better for it. But you're absolutely right. There was some periods in that first half where I thought they just started to gain a little bit of momentum. And if you're at the ground and in real time, you're never sure, obviously, if something's going to be created. But in the end, I think it was maybe pressure and some concern rather than clear-cut chances for them.
Before we transition to Ben, team, do you have any other questions?
Still no Walker. Randall back out of the squad after he played midweek. What is the status for those two guys?
Yeah, both of them in a really good place. The big concern with Walker at this point was maybe forcing him into this a little bit too early. We wanted to get some more work into him so that he could really be fully aware of where he's at with that problem. But it isn't serious, and we are in a good place, and we will certainly look at what Wednesday looks like, and I think he'll be in a much better spot with the work he's been able to do over the weekend. And the same can be said for Randall. It was really fantastic to see him back in the group in the Open Cup. But he's lost a lot of ground and a lot of time, and it really was a decision to make sure that he had a good 3 or 4 days over the weekend. And I would think almost certainly he'll be part of this group come Wednesday.
Thank you, Tim. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, you talked a little bit about kind of the formation changes from DC and how it maybe surprised you guys a little bit. It seemed like on a couple of occasions they were kind of able to either play through midfield or even bypass midfield and not get behind, but like isolate your back line. Do you agree with that? And what do you think from your approach maybe allowed them to do that?
Well, yeah, I was almost certain that they'd play with wing backs, which absolutely happened. I think the omission of Benteke obviously forced them into a decision. Were they going to play with an out-and-out striker, or were they going to add an extra midfield player? And as happened, were they going to try and control the game without having too many focal points? And in the end, with Fontes going off, there was a lot of midfield work, endeavour, second phase, and possession it seemed like, although the stats don't bear it out, I thought they did a very, very good job in that midfield area, and it caused us a lot of problems. Unfortunately for them, there was really no focal point to it. And when it came to the crunch, there wasn't an awful lot of bodies either in the box or in areas that were going to be, that effective. Looking the other way, and more importantly for us, we needed to try and find a way to really plug some of those gaps and some of that momentum they were building, whilst also taking advantage of some of the quality that we have in our front line. And a couple of little shifts at half-time, I felt offered us that stability and foundation, although chances were at a premium. And then, Hanny's chance springs to mind that the goalkeeper makes a good save on. But other than that, they really were, opportunities that were flashes and came and went.
Ben, do you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, with those chances, there weren't a ton of them. Do you think a lot of that is just you guys have played a lot of matches? It's a road trip against an opponent that kind of set up to not let you create a lot of chances, or do you have any maybe other concerns, or do you think it was just kind of a one-off game?
No, Ben, I don't have any concerns. We've had a terrific run of home form. We've scored goals, we've earned points, so I don't have any issues there whatsoever. I think some of the things that we all have to take into consideration, things that maybe, sitting at home you don't realise. The field was just relayed. It was like playing in a rice pudding. It was so heavy and soft and spongy, and it was dead, which, maybe for both teams made a little bit of a difficult surface to work on. Their back line and back trio in particular, were like playing against three Goliaths. They're very different to a lot of teams. Very similar in actual fact to the Cincinnati trio, extremely competitive, very, very difficult to play against, and to find time and space against those guys is not easy. And then to add to that, as we've already spoken about, they dominate the central part of the midfield with 4 midfield players. And I would think, quite a big decision in that was, how do we stop the service into Mukhtar? How do we stop any sort of link play and progression for their team, which a lot of the time goes through him. And there were some really, really nice moments early on in the game where Jacob looked like he was going to take a little bit of advantage down that left-hand side, and unfortunately was unable to, for all sorts of different reasons. And in the end, they were probably some of the brightest moments that may have just changed their mindset and thought process if we could have gone in front, but we didn't.
Thank you, Valer. Go ahead.
Yeah, Gary. It seems like this is another position for Alex Muyl that he learned pretty much and is performing well in. He seems like one of those players that you can plug in anywhere on the field, and you've certainly used him in so many different positions. 2 games now with 2 goals. What are your thoughts on his performance, and has he made it really hard for anyone to take that position from him at this point?
Well, look, first of all, Alex is an incredibly good, what we would class as utility player, Swiss Army knife, however you want to put it. He can play multiple positions, as we're seeing, and he plays them with great determination, energy, and desire. Tonight typifies that. He's incredibly good value for money. He's an individual in games like this that, really do stiffen up that midfield area, and with his energy and determination, make life incredibly difficult, as they did for us. We did likewise. I think he'll take more joy out of the goal at the week on Wednesday, which was a fantastic finish. From what I could see today, him being in that advanced area was the difference. And of course, any goal that you're going to score that goes down and is notched up to yourself, he will always be delighted about. And tonight, it's earned us a very, very valuable point. So I'm extremely pleased for him, and of course, delighted for the group.
Valer, do you have one final question?
Yeah, just one more. This is the second week now where you have a midweek game. In terms of both numbers and quality, do you feel prepared? Do you think you have enough?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the rotations and the The rest for some of these guys has been very decent. The fact that the guys that turned out last Wednesday put in a wonderful performance, whilst obviously being sprinkled with some of the lads that played the weekend before. But we have bodies coming back into the group in Randall and Walker. We've got guys that are fit, healthy and challenging for positions. And at this point in time, in this run of difficult games, by that I mean, midweek games, 7 games this month. I think the group being healthy and in a good place can only bode well for, the opportunities I have to pick the right team and the right shape against whoever the opponent is.
Welcome back, everyone. We are joined by Alex Muyl, who was the goal scorer of the evening for Nashville SC. A unique way to score a goal. Alex, tell us about it.
Yeah, first time scoring like that in my career, but just putting pressure on them in their own box, and luckily something positive happened for us. Yeah.
We are going to open the floor for questions now. Ben, kick it off.
Yeah, Alex, 2 games, 2 probably equally good goals from you. I'm curious, obviously the goal went to VAR review. What was going through your mind when it was being reviewed, and what were you trying to communicate to the referee?
Yeah, I mean, in my head, I knew that it really was just the kind of the low upper chest below my armpit. But obviously it was a red mark there. So I was showing him where the mark was. I think that's the most proof that you can get. Luckily, he was able to take that into account, and they used the VAR well, because really it was on my upper chest. And I've had a rib issue for a while. And so that was also, I wanted to make sure they knew that's what it was. I think that there's been a few times where the VAR has taken goals away from me. So, it evens itself out in the end.
Ben, any follow-up questions?
Yeah, obviously you guys took the lead, and probably a point on the road at the end of the day isn't a bad result. But does the way it happened, with kind of conceding in the last 10 minutes, does that maybe take some of the joy out of it? Yeah,
it's always going to be frustrating when you have 3 points in hand and you don't end up taking them away. I think this was a really hard place to play. DC is a team that's really changed their identity and become a really tough team to play against. And in this atmosphere, it's not easy, especially in the conditions tonight. Field was a little bit choppy, and I think that it was a fair point overall. But we're hungry and we want to win when we can, and we had the opportunity to. So we're definitely going to look at that and try and learn from it, because these are the games that when you win them, you grind through them. I think it brings the team together even more.
Team, take it away.
Yeah, you mentioned that DC is a different team than they have been in the recent past. What do you see that's different about them? Obviously, they've changed personnel, they've changed coaches, they've done a lot of different stuff. What is kind of on the field the practical takeaway from the ways they've changed?
I think that you kind of have seen that the reignition of a combative team, one that's not going to take any plays off, one that's going to be direct and cause a lot of problems and run for 90 minutes. And I think that's always going to be difficult to play against, especially on their pitch, which is small. It kind of lends itself to that kind of game. And they have players who are willing to run for 90 minutes, Knaus, O'Brien. Their whole midfield is willing to put in the work and to grind out results. So that's never going to be easy, especially when you're at their place.
Team, any other questions?
Yeah, and Ben kind of alluded to it, but not just you personally, but your team has been on a pretty good run here the past couple weeks. Do you feel like this allows you to continue the momentum forward? Do you feel like it maybe slows it down a little bit? How do you feel about, I guess, in the big picture, what this means for how you guys can continue the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, with the Open Cup games, that's 6 games unbeaten in a row. I think that's always going to be a positive thing. When you look at the last 5 games, no losses in them, and that make us 6th, I think that makes a big difference. Ultimately, as the season stretches on, you're going to want to get wins sometimes when you could, but the most important thing is that especially when you go away to hard places, that you don't lose. And we really grinded through a really tough game tonight, and I think that's something that we should be proud of and take confidence from. And now we go back home where we've started to build up a good run of form and go for 3 points again. But ultimately, obviously, the team is unbeaten in 6, so that's kind of the main takeaway.
We got time for 2 more questions. Valer, go for it.
Yeah, Alex, Gary described you as a Swiss Army knife. First of all, do you agree with that, I guess? And then the second part is, do you see yourself better in a certain position than the other, or are you equally, as happy playing either way?
Yeah, I think I've shown that I can be versatile and do a lot of different things. Even within games, we're changing our formation a few times. So I think it's helpful that I'm able to do a few things. I like to play interior, but my whole career I've played on the outside, so I've kind of built up a good understanding of those kind of positions. So I'm obviously just happy to do whatever I can to help the team. And we have a really deep team, and so I'm sure at some point someone else is going to be up. But while I'm here, I'm trying to make the most of my opportunities, and I think I've started to do that.
Thank you,
And,
everybody.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Last one.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That was 2 parts, so that's kind of cheeky.
Okay. Just on a lighter note, we've seen you do that celebration twice now, the same celebration. Can you tell us a little bit about that and where it comes from?
Yeah, it's just me and my buddy Diego back home. This off season, we were in Mexico. We were eating a lot of tacos, and I was gaining some weight. And I think he was like, "Oh, you're getting a belly. So if I score this year, I'm gonna rub the belly." Obviously, it's gone now. We're back in the season, but that's for him. It's my best friend.